We live in the greatest nation known to man. Our freedom has come at a great cost, and it's under attack today on so many fronts. If we fail to preserve the tenets of American exceptionalism, we will fade into history like all the others. Ours is a time for patriots.
We will now go to Order 29.
Order 29, placing charter amendment on the November 6, 2018 municipal ballot regarding immigrant voting, sponsored by Councillor Ollie and Ethan K. Strimling.
Councillor Ollie, do you have anything you would like to just present the order, and then I will ask if there are any amendments.
This is an order to an amendment change to get citizens who live in Portland, non-citizen residents in Portland, to vote in municipal elections, which is school board, city council, and in a bond that will come to the community.
And yep. And do you want to present the amendment that you're offering?
Yes. The amendment is to allow every non-citizen who live in Portland to vote on this.
And just to clarify on that amendment that's in your packet, it was also publicized, because we needed to make sure that anything was publicized. It was noticed, to the public in order for that amendment to be passed. So it's in your backup material. And just to add one point to what Councillor Ollie said, it mirrors the language that is used in other communities that have done this, simply saying if you are a resident, you have the opportunity to register and vote.
Yeah, I may have said every citizen. It's for every non-citizen who is 18 years and older, yes, to vote on municipal elections.
Both are that?
Yeah.
Yes. The age piece does not change. The amendment only changes the words, adds the word resident, which mirrors what goes on in other communities. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to debate a little bit more about the pros and cons behind that. So if you would like to speak on this, please line up. It looks like we're lining up here. Please line up upstairs as well, and we will go back and forth between the two for anybody who wishes to speak.
Hi, my name is Maria Testa. I live on Eastfield Road, sort of in the Rosemont, Libby Town area. And I spent quite a bit of time in constitutional law classes in law school, and I think things are just not quite as simple as we just heard, but I'm not here to speak about the law per se. Words have meaning. I say this as an author who writes stories about marginalized young people, including immigrants and refugees, but also as a 27-year resident of Portland who was a regular reader of the Portland Press-Herald. Friday morning was difficult. On Friday morning, I read a Maine Voices opinion piece written by a former member of this council that was both heartbreaking and stunning in its ignorance and in its complete misrepresentation of the right to vote in this country. There was, in fact, no mention of the word right at all. The word privilege, however, was used 6 times. All of that incorrectly, because there is simply no correct way to refer to the voting privilege in this country. It does not exist. It is a fundamentally un-American concept. We all know that the history of the right to vote in this country is not linear. The right to vote has been expanded and contracted in response to expressions of this nation's highest ideals and worst impulses. And it was during some of the lowest points in our history that warped notions of voting privilege have taken hold. Because of the leadership of members of the Portland immigrant community in putting forth this proposal, more people have become aware of the fact that non-citizen resident voting in municipal elections is not new to this country. In fact, it was quite common before the anti-immigrant sentiment of the early 20th century took hold. There was one notable, brief exception to this, however. In 1860, just before the Civil War, the Confederate States of America banned all voting by immigrant residents. The reason for this was simple. Immigrants tended to oppose slavery. After the war, during Reconstruction, the right to vote was restored for this population. 60 years later, when the vast majority of immigrants to this country were decidedly less Anglo-Saxon and Protestant, immigrant voting rights were lost across the land. I ask you to review the nativist rhetoric of the 1920s and compare it to the nativist rhetoric we hear today. And I'd also like to ask you to look at that rhetoric from then and now and decide if you think it reflects the highest ideals or worst impulses of this nation. This is, after all, the rhetoric that was used to justify the revoking of non-citizen resident voting rights. Today, the
Aria, your time is up. Do you need a few minutes?
Just like
a few seconds?
Just,
okay.
Today, the framing of voting as a privilege, whether intentional or unwitting, is the very root of the voter suppression attempts and the fictional narratives created around voter fraud that are running rampant throughout this country. We are living in a time when we are seeing an orchestrated increase in anti-immigrant bigotry coinciding with widespread attempts at a contraction of the right to vote in this country. We must resist this perfect storm. I am here tonight to advocate for an expansion of the right to vote in municipal elections to include all people who meet the residency requirements of the city of Portland. We need to right this historical wrong. Believe it or not, the country is watching us. It's time to step up and show them who we are.
Thank you, Councillor Ollie. Hello again, my name is Steve Sklar. I live at 25 Sandy Terrace in Portland. I hadn't prepared to speak on this issue tonight, but I felt moved to share a story that feels relevant to this and hopefully strikes a chord with the council. My wife and I both work remotely. We had an opportunity to move anywhere in the world. Criteria was a place that has Wi-Fi and a place that has homes that we could afford for our first home. We chose to move to Portland, Maine to buy our first home and to soon hopefully start our family and contribute our passions and ideas to this city. It was a very fortunate position for us to be in. During that process, however, there was one very big factor in the con column for Portland, and that was the fact that Maine is the oldest state in the country and the whitest state in the country. My wife and I have spent significant periods of our lives in Atlanta, Georgia, in India, in Tibet, in Tajikistan, in Ghana, in Iceland, in the Netherlands, and it felt very strange for us to want to move and start our lives in the oldest and whitest state in the country. Ultimately, we decided to go forward with it under the pretense that we would do everything we can to encourage more immigration and more diversity in this state. And I think this proposal seems excellent as a way to enfranchise people and encourage more immigration and encourage more diversity in Portland, and hopefully that can ripple out to our entire state as well. So thank you very much, Councillor Ollie, for your leadership on this.
This is a little bit scary here. Hope I won't fall down. My name is Claude Roux. I'm a founder and executive director of Prosperity Maine, formerly known as Community Financial Literacy. I'm a resident of Westbrook, but I own a business in Poland and also work in Poland for a nonprofit. I've been here for 22 years and have come to this council so many times to address some of the issues that most of you have passed, not because you wanted to support immigrants, because it was humanitarian issues that you really support and felt that it was necessary. I hope that you consider that the same thing tonight. I'm afraid listening to many opponents who have said over and over that the argument we are making are not solid. Even if we can spend a whole day singing, dancing, they will still use the same word. However, I hope that City Councilor, mayor and others, you will consider this issue looking forward instead of just looking around you, that we at the City of Portland really can continue to move the same way other cities are going in the country. The same thing that you heard tonight, many other countries are doing just to follow the footstep. But let me say this. One thing I haven't heard tonight is somebody who can say, we don't want these immigrants to send their kids to school. We don't want these immigrants to rent our homes. We do not want these immigrants to come to work for in our companies. Instead, as I said, I'm also an employer. I know that all of us are dying for workforce. And the only way we can survive, not only in a city, but in the whole state, is to have these immigrants being here in a workforce. So what you're doing is, you like them to do one thing, as many people have said, they pay taxes, they own homes, they do businesses, but you don't really understand that giving them the right, I'm talking about non-citizen, giving them the right to have a say into the children's education by voting into the municipal issues, to the city councilor, school boards, and other local issues, it becomes a big deal. I think that politics has come in front, if not personal interest, instead of voting what the citizens who have put you in the seats where you are demanding. I hope that you can consider voting for this issue, not because you are supporting immigrants, but because you want to see the future of the city together. I'm sure that a few years ago, 2 years ago, we were at the chamber and the city municipalities. We talked about the future of Portland.
Your time is up. Can you please wrap up, sir? Or do you need some few?
I need extra minutes, please.
Okay.
So, I'm sure that we discussed the future of Portland. I said to many of you, if Justin can remember, or even Dusan, I mentioned to you and said the future of Portland should be in all our hands. We cannot have 40% of immigrants' children going to schools, but without giving them any say into those issues. Please, I urge you to remember that the city is all of us at stake. If we want to support the growth, the economy, we need to make this issue our own. Thank you, and I urge you to vote in favor of this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Claude.
Good evening. My name is Omi Amarasingham. I'm the Advocacy Director at the ACLU of Maine. The ACLU has a deep commitment to protecting and expanding both voting rights and immigrants' rights. We support efforts to make it easier for more people to vote and oppose measures that would prevent people from participating fully in elections. The ACLU also works to protect the rights of immigrants against state and federal overreach and discrimination. In addition, the ACLU works on issues of data privacy and security and is at the forefront of legal movements to protect people in the United States from government surveillance. The proposed amendment to the Charter touches on all of these issues. We believe that everyone who lives in the community should have a voice in how their community is governed. Implementation of this proposal must take steps to protect non-citizen voters from serious unintended consequences, including deportation, imprisonment, and permanent immigration bars. To that end, we encourage the Council to consider 4 core requirements of implementing non-citizen voting. First, a comprehensive plan including city-funded public education for city employees, poll workers, and non-citizens to ensure that all voters vote only in elections for which they are eligible. Second, a robust data privacy system to protect against misuse of non-citizen voter information by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, lawmakers, or anti-immigrant members of the public. Third, a plan for posting warnings on ballots at polling places and on informational websites about the privacy and immigration risks posed by non-citizen voting, translated into multiple languages. Fourth, an ongoing process for evaluating the safety and effectiveness of the program after implementation. In addition, I would just like to raise that we appreciate the amendment to the proposed amendment to the Charter that was brought forward. The original language that was proposed, we do take issue with asking city employees and officials to collect immigration documents and determine people's immigration status. The amended version, we can support that because we believe that immigration status should not be an issue here. The spirit of the proposal is to extend voting rights to people who live in the city regardless of immigration status. We support extending municipal voting rights to non-citizens who are residents of Portland and emphasize that this is not a symbolic vote. As the proposal moves forward, the city has an obligation to fully fund implementation and do everything in its power to mitigate the risks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all. My name is John Torsch. I'm on the executive board of the Southern Maine Democratic Socialists of America. I live at 461 Cumberland Ave, and I'm running for City Council for District 2. I'm enfranchised with a vote because I was born here. I didn't pass a literacy test. I didn't pay thousands of dollars. I didn't endure decades of bureaucracy. I did nothing, and yet I have this power. Our immigrant neighbors weren't gifted this privilege of birthplace. They weren't born here. They came here, many of them drawn to the dignity that democracy affords. Unfortunately, most of the arguments against resident voting that we've heard tonight undermine the very power of democracy. I've heard that non-citizens shouldn't be allowed to vote simply because they're not citizens. While there's plenty of precedent for non-citizen voting in municipalities across the nation, the more important point here is that citizenship is a construct. We made it up. None of the classifications on our path to citizenship hold any intrinsic moral value or authority. We are human beings with or without these systems. And as humans in a democratic society, we have the power to define what constitutes fully vested membership in our communities. I've heard the argument that non-citizen voting could incite a prolonged and costly legal battle, or that the referendum could draw out conservative voters and hurt Democratic candidates in November. However, neither cost nor partisan politics nor timing make for legitimate arguments against fighting for what we believe is right. There is never a wrong time to do the right thing. I've heard that non-citizens voting will reduce the power of each citizen's vote, but in a democracy, there is nothing more or less valuable about the vote of a citizen versus the vote of a non-citizen. This thinking only upholds and continues a history of power in which wealthy white men withhold enfranchisement from marginalized groups. It also relies on the flawed logic that more votes somehow makes democracy weaker. In fact, democracy is strengthened when we include more voices. This wasn't in my write-up, but I also heard the argument that people that own property and businesses here should also have a say in the vote if immigrants do. And I'd like to remind people that people are more important than property. Democracy is the tool with which we affirm and build dignity in society. Without the ability to partake in civic discourse and decision-making, we are stripped of our voice, we are stripped of our power, and we are stripped of our very inclusion in our communities. Indeed, we are stripped of our humanity. I ask the Council today to resist their paternalistic urges, trust in the power of our democracy, and affirm the human dignity of all Portland residents by allowing the people to vote on this referendum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, would you please remain standing? Here to honor America with the singing of our national anthem is two-time Academy of Country Music Award winner, Carrie Underwood.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's bright glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you very much for inviting me to come tonight, Mayor Strimling. My name is Barbara Campbell Harvey, and I live on Forest Avenue, right in the beautiful area, the bucolic area under construction right now. And I am not representing any organization, although many of you know me in my political role. Today I am here as a voter in the city of Portland, and I'm here to talk about something that came up 10 years ago, and yet here we are again, bringing up whether non-citizens should vote. It forged a friendship for me with Jill Doosan and Councillor Doosan. I really appreciate that. So how do I stand on this? The Constitution of the United States of America, to which I am referring, and I am a constitutionalist first, says that you must be 18 years of age and a citizen of the United States. And that's it. My conversation is over. 18 years, either born here or naturalized. Millions, maybe billions of people have come before and have taken care of waiting their time and becoming U.S. citizens the legal route. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't care about our non-citizens. Our non-citizens are part of the city of Portland, and I would love to hear their opinions. In Maine, we have always used the town meeting model, where we use tonight a chance for the public to address any issue they would like to have or be brought forth. But voting is a constitutional right. It is the duty of a citizen in the United States of America. You must be 18 years of age, naturalized, or born here. And my feeling is very strong about this. This is the hill I will die on. And if it means that I can no longer be your favorite substitute in the Portland School District, because I see the school district supports this, so be it. If it means I cannot be your warden at Deering High School, running the election and upholding the Constitution, so be it. What I want to see is every person who is voting on the polls pledges allegiance to that flag. And they pledge allegiance, and in their heart they feel as strongly as I do that when Carrie Underwood hits the high note in the national anthem, I want to see tears in your eyes. That's what you should be doing when you pull that curtain behind you and you vote. You're voting in the United States of America as a U.S. citizen. And when I have lived abroad, nobody offered me the opportunity to even give an opinion. So I would strongly vote against this. And I would like to see us open the Portland Charter. I would like to be on the Charter Commission. I would volunteer to serve. And while that is open, I would get rid of ranked choice voting, the marijuana issue, and a few other things when the Charter is open. But you are not going to change the Charter to allow non-citizens to vote. Thank you very much. My name is Barbara Harvey.
Councillor Ollie, Mayor Strimling, councillors. My name is James Mosher. I'm an American. I'm a Maine resident. First, either citizenship means something or it does not. There were roughly 146 countries at the time the Patriots composed the U.S. Constitution. Notice in the preamble the opening phrase, "We the people of the United States." Why did they exclude all the other countries? Were they bigots? The Constitution was written to be the law of the land for Americans, not the citizens of the world. Second, according to FAIR, Maine has roughly 5,000 illegals residing in the shadows at a cost of $47 million to Maine taxpayers. Given the City of Portland's Harboring Havens Ordinance, which forbids law enforcement from inquiring about immigration status, how will you ensure that illegals will not be voting in municipal elections? Third, given the overwhelming burden already carried by Maine taxpayers, for subsidized housing, academic costs, costs of living such as TANF, Medicaid, food stamps, etc., not to mention welfare fraud, as seen recently here in Portland with Ali Dakham and his Haram Halal market. A cost of millions to Maine taxpayers. Many of us would argue that the taxpayer is already on the hook for much of the progressive policies coming out of Portland. So when the argument is made that migrant residents pay taxes and therefore should have a vote, what about the non-resident citizens in other cities and towns in Maine who are paying for most of what this body has enabled? Who is receiving worse treatment here in Maine? The taxpayer who struggles to carve out an existence for self and family, or the immigrant who qualifies for the busload of bennies? Fourth, given the data available revealing a seismic demographic shift in the impact of progressive policies on cities like Hamtramck, Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, Hazleton, Pennsylvania, Buffalo, New York, Lewiston, Maine, Portland, Maine, it's clear to see that there's a ploy to subvert entire populations of people. I haven't even touched on the ideological cost, but suffice it to say, progressive policies have enabled our enemy to exploit the system. Maine has fostered 2 terrorists who took advantage of the welfare hammock and went on to fight for ISIS. In 2008, the United States versus the Holy Land Foundation lawsuit yielded some valuable information regarding the Muslim Brotherhood and their plan for civilization jihad. The Muslim Brotherhood strategy for North American conquest involves mass immigration, taking advantage of welfare, infiltrating government offices. Councillor Ollie, I got about 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
And when strong enough infiltrating government offices, and when strong enough subverting them, their ultimate goal is governance by Sharia. Is it possible, given what the FBI has told about terror cells operating in every state, and knowing what we know about the Muslim Brotherhood's quest for civilization jihad, that your vote tonight might be aiding and abetting terrorists? And one more thing. Progressives point to roughly 13 cities and towns that already allow non-citizen voting to buttress their arguments. Would it surprise you to know that all these cities and towns turned out sizable majorities for Hillary Clinton? Here in Portland, Clinton garnered 76% of the votes. Facts are stubborn things. The data clearly indicates that wherever tried, non-citizen voting serves to cement democratic victories.
James, do you want to please wrap up?
Yes, sir. Anybody doubt me? I'll send you the links.
Thank you.